You know what hurts more than losing your husband? Watching your own daughter smash a plate inches from your face while her friends laugh. I'm Eleanor Hayes, and at 68 years old, I thought moving in with my daughter Lila would bring comfort. Instead, I became the unwanted guest in her perfect suburban life. But when a lawyer knocked on our door the morning after that nightmare dinner, everything changed. My late husband had left Lila a fortune with one condition that would either save our family or destroy it completely. Stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far the story travels. The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days when I moved into Lila's house. I stood on her pristine porch with 2 suitcases containing everything I'd decided to keep from 42 years of marriage, watching water stream off the edges of her perfectly maintained gutters. The doorbell played some cheerful melody I didn't recognize. Through the frosted glass, I could see Lila's silhouette approaching, but she wasn't hurrying. When she finally opened the door, her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Mom, you're early." I wasn't. We'd confirmed 2 o'clock 3 times over the phone. It was 2:03. The traffic was lighter than expected, I said, even though I'd been sitting in her driveway for 20 minutes, working up the courage to ring the bell. Lila stepped aside, but barely. I had to angle my suitcase to get through without scratching her door frame. She was wearing white linen pants and a silk blouse, the kind of outfit that screamed, "I have important things to do today, and you're interrupting them." "Let me show you to your room," she said, already walking away. "Not your new home, not where you'll be staying, just your room." I followed her up the stairs, my suitcase wheels bumping against each step. She didn't offer to help. At the landing, I paused to catch my breath. My hip had been bothering me since the funeral, but Lila kept walking. "It's the last door on the left," she called back. I had Marcus move some boxes around yesterday. The room was small, smaller than I'd expected. A twin bed sat against one wall, the kind with a metal frame that probably came from a discount furniture store. There was a dresser with 3 drawers, a lamp, and nothing else. The walls were beige, the curtains were beige, even the bedspread was beige. "I hope this works," Lila said from the doorway. She didn't come in. "We're using the other guest room for Marcus's gym equipment, and the 3rd bedroom is my office, so..." "It's perfect," I lied. "Good, well, I have a conference call in 10 minutes, so I'll let you get settled. Bathrooms across the hall. Try not to use too much hot water. Marcus likes to shower after his evening run." Then she was gone. I sat on the edge of the bed and it squeaked. Through the thin walls I could hear her heels clicking down the hallway, then her voice, bright and warm, greeting someone on the phone, a client probably, or a friend, someone who mattered. My husband Robert's funeral had been 4 weeks ago. 4 weeks of condolence casseroles, awkward hugs from neighbors I barely knew, and the deafening silence of a house that had been filled with his laughter for 4 decades. The plan had been to stay in our home, to figure things out slowly, to grieve at my own pace. Then I'd opened the property tax bill. Robert had handled all the finances. I'd never thought to ask about the details, and he'd never worried me with them. But apparently, we'd been mortgaging more than I knew, refinancing to help Lila with her business ventures, to pay for the house she now considered too small for me to occupy comfortably. The numbers didn't make sense. The insurance barely covered the funeral costs. The savings account I thought held our retirement had less than $3,000. When I'd called Lila, crying, trying to explain that I might lose the house, she'd sighed, actually sighed. "Mom, I told Dad not to lend money to that contractor. I told him Uncle Jerry's investment opportunity was a scam, but he never listened. Lila, I don't know what to do." Another sigh, longer this time. "Look, Marcus and I have been talking. We have the space. You can move in here until you figure something out. But Mom, you need to understand we have our lives, our routines. This is temporary." Temporary. I'd unpacked that word every night since, trying to figure out what it meant. Temporary until when? Until I found a job at 68 with no work history except 20 years as a part-time librarian 3 decades ago. Until I qualified for low-income housing. until I simply became too much of an inconvenience and found myself on the street. But I'd said yes, because what choice did I have? Now, sitting in this beige room listening to my daughter laugh with someone who wasn't me, I wondered if I'd made a terrible mistake. Currently, the first week wasn't so bad. Lila was busy with work and Marcus traveled for his job in pharmaceutical sales, so I mostly had the house to myself during the day. I tried to make myself useful. I did laundry, careful to separate everything exactly how Lila liked. I cooked dinners that sat waiting in the oven while Lila texted that she'd be late, then later, then don't wait up. I ate alone at their kitchen island, sitting on the same stool every night, watching HGTV on the small TV they kept in the corner. When Lila did come home, she'd breeze through, grabbing a plate, eating standing up, while scrolling through her phone. "How was your day, sweetheart?" I'd ask. "Busy. That client I told you about, well, I probably didn't tell you. You know how crazy things have been. Anyway, he's being impossible about the timeline." She'd never asked about my day. The second week I tried harder. I organized the pantry, alphabetizing the spices and rotating the canned goods. I weeded the garden beds out front. I even cleaned out the gutters, wobbling on their fancy extension ladder while my hip screamed. When Lila came home and saw me climbing down, muddy leaves in a bucket, she didn't thank me. "Mom, we have a landscaping service for that. What if you'd fallen? Do you know how much our home owner's insurance costs already?" I'd wanted to make things nice, to earn my keep. Instead, I'd become a liability. By the third week, I'd learned the rules, even though Lila never explicitly stated them. Don't use the good towels. Don't adjust the thermostat. Don't move anything in the living room. Marcus has it arranged exactly how he likes it. Don't watch TV after 9 because it disturbs their sleep. Don't cook anything with strong smells. Don't ask them to repeat themselves. Don't expect them to include me in their plans. Don't exist too loudly. I became a ghost in their home, floating from my beige room to the kitchen and back, trying to take up as little space as possible. Then came Mother's Day. "I'm having a few friends over for brunch," Lila announced on Saturday morning. "Nothing fancy, just mimosas and a spread. I've hired a caterer." My heart lifted. "That sounds lovely. Can I help set up?" She paused, her coffee cup halfway to her lips. "Actually, Mom, these are my friends from the club. It's kind of a younger crowd, you know. Lots of talk about tennis tournaments and the charity auction. I just thought maybe it would be boring for you." The message was clear. "You're not invited to my Mother's Day brunch, Mom." "I understand," I said, my voice small. "I'll stay in my room." "You don't have to hide," she said, laughing like I'd made a joke. "Just maybe make yourself scarce. Oh, and if you could not use the kitchen between 10 and 2, that would be great. The caterers need the space." That night, I lay in my twin bed and stared at the beige ceiling. Robert's voice echoed in my memory. "Lila's always been ambitious. She gets that from you, Ellie. All that drive, that determination. But when had that drive turned into coldness? When had my daughter stopped seeing me as her mother and started seeing me as an obligation?" Sunday morning arrived with the kind of sunshine that felt like mockery. I heard Lila's friends arriving around 10:30, their voices bright and performative. The laughter floated up the stairs, wind chimes of women who'd never known what it felt like to be unwanted in their own daughter's home. I'd planned to read. I'd borrowed a mystery novel from the library during one of my rare trips out, but the words swam on the page. The laughter downstairs grew louder. Someone was telling a story about a disaster at hot yoga. Everyone thought it was hilarious. Around noon, my stomach growled. I'd skipped breakfast, not wanting to get in the caterer's way. I debated waiting until they left, but I was lightheaded, and my medication needed to be taken with food. I crept downstairs as quietly as possible. The kitchen was chaos. Empty champagne bottles, half-eaten quiche, strawberry stems scattered across the marble countertop. But no people. They must have moved to the dining room or the patio. I found some crackers in the pantry, the cheap ones I'd bought for myself, and was reaching for a glass when I heard Lila's voice from the dining room. "Honestly, Janet, I don't know how much longer I can do this." I froze. The situation with your mom? That was Brittany, Lila's friend from the country club. I'd met her once. She'd look through me like I was furniture. She's just so there, you know. Every time I come home, she's hovering, making dinner I didn't ask for, rearranging things. Marcus is about ready to lose it. My hand trembled. The glass slipped slightly. I caught it, but my heart was hammering. How long is she staying? Another voice I didn't recognize. Who knows? Lila's laugh was bitter. She burned through all their savings. My dad made some spectacularly stupid investments before he died. Now she's essentially broke, and I'm supposed to just support her indefinitely. That's so unfair, Brittany said. I mean, didn't they help you start your business? That was different. That was an investment. They got paid back eventually. This is just charity. The word hit me like a slap. Can't she go to a home or something? Janet asked. On what money? And can you imagine the guilt trip? Lila put me in a nursing home. She'd make me the villain. You're already basically running a nursing home, someone joked, and they all laughed. I should have left, should have crept back upstairs with my crackers and my dignity, but I was frozen, holding that glass, listening to my daughter catalogue my failures. The worst part is she tries so hard, Lila continued. Like this morning, she asked if she could help set up for today. As if I'd want her greeting you all at the door in her Walmart cardigans, talking about her dead husband. More laughter. You're terrible, Brittany said, but she was giggling. I know, I should be more patient. It's just I worked so hard to build this life, this house, this reputation. And now I have my elderly mother living here like some kind of charity case, and it's embarrassing. Embarrassing. I was embarrassing. The glass slipped from my hand. It didn't just fall, it exploded against the tile floor, shards scattering in every direction. The conversation in the dining room stopped dead. What was that? Janet asked. I heard Lila's chair scrape back. Then she was in the doorway, staring at me, surrounded by broken glass, crackers still in my other hand. Mom, I told you not to use the kitchen. 6 women appeared behind her, all of them dressed in pastel linen and expensive jewelry, all of them looking at me with expressions ranging from pity to disgust. I was just getting a snack, I whispered. I'm sorry about the glass. Those are Waterford crystal, Lila said. Her voice was ice. They were a wedding gift. I'll replace it. With what money, Mom? The question hung in the air. Everyone knew the answer. I knelt down to pick up the shards, my hip protesting, my hands shaking. Don't, Lila snapped. You'll cut yourself and bleed all over the floor. Just go upstairs. I'll have the caterers handle it. Lila, I'm so sorry. Upstairs, now. I'd been dismissed, like a child, like a servant caught stealing. I walked past those 6 women, with their perfect hair and their perfect lives. My cheap cardigan suddenly feeling like a scarlet letter. Behind me, I heard Brittany whisper something that ended in, so awkward. Then Lila's voice, bright again, hostess mode reactivated. I am so sorry about that, ladies. Now, who wants more champagne? I didn't come out of my room for the rest of the day. Around 6, there was a soft knock on my door. Marcus's voice, uncomfortable. Eleanor, Lila wanted me to bring you some leftovers. He left a plate outside the door. I waited until I heard his footsteps retreat before opening it. Quiche, fruit salad, a croissant, all arranged on one of the everyday plates, not the fine china the guests had used. I sat on my bed and ate it mechanically, tasting nothing. The voices from earlier kept playing in my head, embarrassing. Charity case. How much longer can I do this? Robert, I thought, what did you leave me with? Our marriage hadn't been perfect. He'd been stubborn, sometimes reckless with money, always convinced the next opportunity would be the one that made us rich. But he'd loved me. I'd never doubted that. And he'd loved Lila completely, supported every one of her ventures, bragged about her to anyone who would listen. Had he known? Had he seen this coldness in her, this casual cruelty? Or had it developed after, a consequence of stress and resentment I'd been too grief-blind to notice? I thought about the little girl who used to climb into my lap during thunderstorms, The teenager who'd made me terrible Mother's Day breakfasts in bed, burnt toast and weak coffee that I'd pretended were gourmet, the young woman who'd called me crying after her first big client meeting, who'd said, "Mom, I couldn't have done this without you believing in me." When had I stopped being the person she needed and started being the person she endured? Around 8, I heard them leave, Marcus and Lila, heading out for dinner somewhere. They didn't invite me, didn't say goodbye. I just heard the garage door open and close, then silence. I walked downstairs in the empty house. The caterers had cleaned everything. You'd never know there'd been a party, except for the faint smell of champagne and expensive perfume. In the kitchen, I noticed they'd replaced the broken glass. A new one sat in the cabinet, identical to the one I'd shattered. Probably Lila had ordered it delivered same day. Couldn't have her set incomplete. I stood there in that gleaming kitchen with its marble counters and professional-grade appliances, and I felt more alone than I'd ever felt in the 40 years of my marriage. At least when Robert died, I'd been permitted to grieve. Here, I was expected to be grateful for the crumbs of my daughter's attention while slowly disappearing. I went back to my beige room and lay down without changing into my nightgown. Tomorrow, I thought, tomorrow I'll look into other options. Senior apartments maybe, roommate situations, anything that would let me leave this house with my dignity intact. But even as I thought it, I knew the truth. I had nowhere to go and no money to get there. I was trapped, and Lila knew it partly. I woke to voices downstairs, for a moment disoriented in the grey morning light. I thought maybe it was a dream, but no, there were definitely voices. Lila's, high and confused, and a man's, unfamiliar, calm and professional. I checked my phone, 7:47 a.m., Monday morning. Climbing out of bed, my hips stiff from yesterday's stress, I pulled on my robe and crept to the hallway. The voices were clearer now, coming from the foyer. "I don't understand," Lila was saying. "My father's estate was settled months ago. Everything was handled by Martin Brooks at Brooks and Associates." "Yes, Mrs. Chen, I'm aware. However, there was a separate trust that Mr. Hayes established independently 3 years ago. I'm from the firm that managed it. My name is David Harrison." "A separate trust? That doesn't make any sense." "May I come in? This is a matter that involves your mother as well." My heart started pounding. I gripped the railing at the top of the stairs. "My mother's still asleep," Lila said. "Actually, I'm awake." They both looked up. Lila's expression was irritated. Of course I'd interrupted. The man, this David Harrison, was younger than I expected, maybe 45, in a grey suit and carrying a leather briefcase. "Mrs. Hayes," he said, and something in his voice was kind. "I apologize for the early hour. I wanted to catch you both before work hours. May I have a few minutes of your time?" "Of course," I said, descending the stairs slowly. "Would you like some coffee?" "That would be lovely, thank you." Lila shot me a look that said, "Why are you offering him coffee in my house?" but didn't contradict me. We settled in the living room, the former one that I'd been told not to use except for guests. David Harrison placed his briefcase on the coffee table and withdrew several folders. "I'll get straight to the point," he said. "Robert Hayes, your late husband and father, established a trust in January 3 years ago. The principal amount is $1.2 million. Lila gasped. My hand went to my throat. "That's impossible," Lila said. "My father didn't have that kind of money." "The funds came from the sale of a patent," David explained. "Mr. Hayes invented a small component used in medical devices early in his career. The patent rights were purchased by a manufacturer, and he invested the proceeds very wisely. Robert had never told me. In all our years together, he'd never mentioned a patent, never mentioned over $1 million sitting somewhere. The betrayal of that secret stung almost as much as everything else. The trust has specific conditions," David continued. "Mr. Hayes was very clear about his intentions." He pulled out a document and began reading. "The full sum of the trust, including all interest accrued, is to be distributed to my daughter, Lila Chen, on the condition that she provides appropriate care and accommodation to my wife, Eleanor Hayes, for as long as Eleanor requires it. Care is defined as treating Eleanor with dignity, respect, and kindness, and ensuring she has comfortable living conditions suitable for a woman of her age and health status. Lila's face had gone white. If these conditions are not met, David continued, reading directly from the document, as determined by an independent investigation conducted 6 months after Eleanor takes residence with Lila, the entire sum of the trust shall be transferred to Eleanor Hayes to use as she sees fit. The room was silent except for the ticking of Lila's expensive wall clock. 6 months, I said slowly. I moved in 4 weeks ago. Yes, David confirmed, which means the investigation will begin in approximately 5 months. However, Mr. Hayes included a clause that allows for early investigation if evidence suggests the conditions are not being met. He looked at me directly. Mrs. Hayes, I have to ask, are you being treated with dignity, respect, and kindness in this home? Lila's eyes snapped to me, wide with panic. This was it, the moment. I could tell the truth about yesterday's humiliation, about the beige room, about being called an embarrassment and a charity case. I could claim that money and escape this nightmare. But she was my daughter, my only child. My voice cracked. It's been an adjustment. Mom gets emotional, Lila jumped in, her voice suddenly warm, concerned. Losing Dad has been so hard on her, we're all still grieving. But Marcus and I have been doing everything we can to make her comfortable, haven't we, Mom? She reached over and grabbed my hand. Her palm was sweating. David Harrison watched this exchange with the neutral expression of someone who'd seen every possible family dynamic play out in his office. I understand this is a lot to process, he said. Mr. Hayes wanted to ensure his wife would be cared for, and he knew the financial incentive would be motivating. However, his primary concern was Eleanor's well-being. He turned to me again. Mrs. Hayes, you're not required to make any statements today. The formal investigation won't begin for several more months, but I want you to know that you have options. There's a hotline number in these documents where you can report concerns confidentially at any time. He handed me a folder. My name was printed on the tab. I'll leave you both to discuss this. Mrs. Chen, you'll find all the relevant documentation in your folder, including the specific criteria by which care and respect will be evaluated. He stood, snapped his briefcase closed, and headed for the door. After he left, Lila and I sat in silence for what felt like an hour but was probably only seconds. Then she turned to me, and her expression was unlike anything I'd ever seen on my daughter's face before. Calculation, mixed with barely concealed panic. Mom, she said, her voice honey-sweet, nothing like yesterday's ice. We should talk about making your room more comfortable. What if we moved Marcus's gym equipment to the garage and gave you the bigger guest room? Would you like that? I stared at her. And we should get you some new furniture, real furniture, not that awful twin bed. What do you like? Traditional, modern? We could go shopping together this weekend. Lila, I know I've been distracted with work, she continued, words tumbling out faster now. I haven't been present enough. That's going to change. I'm going to block off time for us. Maybe we could do a mother-daughter day every week, lunch, shopping, whatever you want. She was still holding my hand, gripping it tightly now. Yesterday was terrible, she said, and I saw tears forming in her eyes. Real tears or performed ones? Those women, they don't matter. You're my mother. You're what matters. I'm so sorry about the glass, about making you feel... She stopped herself. About making me feel like what? Unwanted? Embarrassing? A charity case? I just want us to be okay, she finished. Can we be okay? And there it was, the question that had no right answer. Because I knew the truth. The sudden kindness wasn't real. It was fear. It was $1.2 million of fear wrapped in fake tears and furniture promises. But I was still her mother. And some small, desperate part of me wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, the money could force her to see me again, to remember that I was a person who deserved kindness, not because a trust document demanded it, but because I'd raised her, loved her, sacrificed for her. I need to think, I said quietly, pulling my hand away. Of course, Lila said quickly. Take all the time you need. There's no pressure. I just want you to know I'm here. Whatever you need. She stood up, smoothed her skirt, and for just a moment I saw the mask slip. The calculation in her eyes as she looked at me, measuring, strategizing. Then it was back. The concerned daughter, the caring host. I'll call my office and tell them I'm working from home today, she said. We can spend the day together. Would you like that? No, I wanted to say. I want my real daughter back, not this performance. But instead I nodded, because even fake kindness in that moment was better than the alternative. And because I needed time to figure out what to do with the power I'd just been handed, the power to either save my daughter or save myself, I just didn't know yet which one I'd choose. See, the rest of that day passed in a surreal haze. Lila cancelled her meetings. She made me pancakes from scratch, not from a box, and served them with strawberries and real maple syrup. She asked about my hip, suggested we find a good physical therapist. She pulled out photo albums from when she was little, and we looked through them together, laughing at pictures of her gap-toothed grin and my unfortunate 1980s perm. It felt almost like old times, except it wasn't. Because every kindness came with a weight, an unspoken reminder. I'm doing this so you won't take the money. Around 3 o'clock, Marcus came home early. Lila must have called him. He was awkward at first, hovering in the doorway. Eleanor, he said, using my first name for maybe the third time since I'd moved in. I wanted to apologize for not being more welcoming. This is your home too. Another rehearsed line, another performance. But I smiled and thanked him because what else could I do? That night, Lila insisted I join them for dinner at their favorite Italian restaurant. We sat at a nice table, not tucked in the back where they usually placed elderly single diners. Lila ordered wine, good wine, and told funny stories about her clients. You should meet them, Mom, she said. You'd be great at the networking events. You have that warmth people respond to. 2 days ago, she called me embarrassing. Now I had marketable warmth. I played along, laughed at the right moments, let her refill my wine glass, pretended I didn't notice Marcus checking his phone under the table, his jaw tight with resentment. When we got home, there were furniture catalogues on the kitchen counter. For your room, Lila explained. I flagged some options I thought you'd like, but you choose whatever you want. Money's no object. Money's no object. The irony wasn't lost on me. I took the catalogues upstairs to my beige room and sat on my squeaky twin bed. Tomorrow, maybe this room would start transforming into something comfortable, something that felt less like a storage closet and more like a home. But it would all be bought with fear. I opened the folder David Harrison had given me and read through the trust documents. Robert's handwriting was on some of the notes in the margins. Ellie deserves better than to be a burden. Make sure Lila understands that. He'd known. Somehow, he'd known that Lila might not choose kindness on her own. So he tried to buy it for me. The question was, could kindness that was purchased ever become real? And did it matter if it couldn't as long as I was treated well? I didn't have answers, not yet, but as I lay down to sleep that night in the same uncomfortable bed I'd been crying in just 24 hours earlier, I made myself a promise. I would watch. I would wait. I would see if my daughter could learn to love me again, or if this was all just an elaborate con to secure her inheritance. Either way, I wouldn't make it easy for her, because for the first time in 4 weeks I had something I hadn't had since Robert died. Power. And I was going to use it wisely. The new furniture arrived on Thursday. I watched from the window as 2 delivery men hauled a queen-size bed frame up the stairs, followed by a matching dresser, nightstands, and a reading chair upholstered in soft grey fabric. Lila stood in the hallway directing traffic, like a general commanding troops. Careful with that corner. The walls just got repainted. Repainted. In 4 days, she'd had the entire room redone. cream walls instead of beige, new curtains in a delicate floral pattern, even a small chandelier to replace the basic lamp fixture. It looked like a room from one of those home improvement shows she used to watch religiously. It looked nothing like me. What do you think? Lila appeared beside me, slightly breathless, her phone still in her hand. I went with a French country aesthetic, timeless, elegant. The reading chair has lumbar support. I read that's important for seniors. Seniors, not mothers, not people. Seniors. It's beautiful, I said, and it was. You didn't have to do all this. Of course I did. She squeezed my shoulder and I tried not to flinch. You're my mom. You deserve to be comfortable. The delivery men finished assembling everything and left. Lila had tipped them generously. I saw the bills she pressed into their hands, $50 each, probably more than they expected. Everything about this transformation was generous on the surface, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was watching someone buy their way out of guilt. I have to jump on a call, Lila said, checking her phone. But tonight, let's have dinner here. I'll cook. Your favorite pot roast with those little potatoes you like. She remembered my favorite meal. Of course she did. She'd probably looked it up in some notes app where she kept track of useful information about clients. After she left, I sat in the new reading chair and tested it. The lumbar support was good. Too good. It felt like sitting in a luxury car. Impressive, but impersonal. I missed my old furniture. The chair Robert and I had bought at a yard sale 30 years ago, worn but comfortable. Shaped to my body from decades of reading mystery novels. The dresser that had been his grandmother's, with the sticky third drawer, and the water ring on top from where he always left his coffee cup. All of it sold or donated when I downsized. All those memories condensed into 2 suitcases and a handful of photographs. And now I was supposed to be grateful for furniture picked out of a catalogue by a daughter who was counting down the months until an investigator would determine if she deserved $1 million. I opened the nightstand drawer and found it lined with decorative paper. Inside was a small notepad and pen, both monogrammed with my initials. Lila had thought of everything. The performance was flawless. That night, she did cook pot roast. Marcus set the table with their good china, the kind they'd used for the Mother's Day brunch I hadn't been invited to. Lila lit candles. She'd even bought flowers for the centerpiece. To family, she said, raising her wine glass. Marcus raised his reluctantly. I could see the tension in his jaw, the way his eyes kept darting to Lila like he wanted to say something but didn't dare. To family, I echoed and took a sip. The pot roast was good, almost as good as the one I used to make, though she'd used too much rosemary. But I ate it and complimented every bite because that's what you did in hostage situations disguised as family dinners. So, Mom, Lila said, cutting into her meat with precise movements, I've been thinking about activities we could do together. There's a book club at the community center, and the senior center has exercise classes, gentle ones appropriate for your age. That sounds nice, I said carefully. I already signed you up for the Wednesday morning class. Water aerobics. It's great for joint health. She'd already signed me up, not asked if I was interested, not suggested we try it together, just enrolled me like she was registering a child for summer camp. I appreciate that, I said, but I'd like to look into options myself first. The fork paused halfway to her mouth. Oh, of course, I just thought, since you've been having trouble with your hip. My hip is fine. But you were limping the other day. I'm allowed to limp in my own home, Lila. The words came out sharper than I intended. Marcus's eyes widened. Lila's expression flickered just for a second from concerned daughter to something harder. I'm just trying to help, she said softly. I worry about you. And there it was again, the guilt trip. The implication that I was being unreasonable, ungrateful for all her generous concern. I set down my fork. I know you are, and I appreciate everything you've done this week. The room is lovely, this dinner is lovely, but Lila, we need to talk about what's actually happening here. What do you mean? You know what I mean. Marcus suddenly became very interested in his water glass. Lila dabbed at her mouth with her napkin, buying time. Mom, if this is about Dad's trust, of course it's about the trust. A week ago, you called me an embarrassment to your friends. You told Brittany you didn't know how much longer you could stand having me here. Now you're cooking my favorite meals and buying monogrammed notepads. We both know why. Her face flushed red. You heard that? Every word. I didn't mean it came out wrong. I was venting to friends. Everyone vents sometimes. You called me a charity case. I was frustrated. Do you know how stressful it's been trying to manage my business and take care of you and keep this household running? I'm human, Mom. I make mistakes. So I gestured around the dining room, the candles, the china, is because you made a mistake? It's because I realized I needed to do better. Her voice rose. That lawyer showing up was a wake-up call. I've been so focused on work that I lost sight of what matters. You're my mother. You shouldn't have to wonder if you're wanted here. But I do wonder, every single day. Silence fell over the table. Marcus cleared his throat. Maybe I should. Stay, Lila said firmly. Then to me, what do you want me to say, Mom? That I've been a terrible daughter? Fine, I have been. That I took you for granted? I did. That I only started being nice because of the money? Maybe that's partly true, but does the reason matter if the result is the same? You have a beautiful room now. We're spending time together. I'm trying. Are you trying because you want to or because you have to? Her jaw clenched. Does it make a difference? Yes, I said quietly. It makes all the difference in the world. She threw her napkin on the table. You know what? Nothing I do is going to be good enough for you. I could wait on you hand and foot for the next 5 months, and you'd still question my motives. So maybe you should just call that investigator right now and tell them I'm a horrible person. Take the money, move out, find somewhere else to be miserable. Lila, Marcus said, his voice warning. No, I mean it. I'm tired of walking on eggshells. Tired of every nice thing I do being analyzed like it's some kind of manipulation. If she wants to leave, she should leave. I stood up slowly, my hip protesting. You're right, I should. I walked away from that table, from that pot roast and those candles and that performance of family, and climbed the stairs to my beautiful new room that felt like a gilded cage. Behind me, I heard Marcus's low voice. What the hell is wrong with you? And Lila's response, brittle and defensive. She's the one being impossible. I closed the door and sat on my new bed with its expensive linens and decorative pillows, and I let myself cry for the first time since the lawyer had shown up, because the truth was worse than I'd wanted to admit. The money hadn't changed Lila, it had just revealed who she'd already become. The next morning I found the business card David Harrison had left and called his office. His assistant answered on the second ring. Harrison and Associates. This is Eleanor Hayes. I need to speak with Mr. Harrison about the trust investigation. 1 moment, please. Classical music played while I waited. Through my door, I could hear Lila moving around downstairs. She'd left early for a meeting, or at least that's what the note on the kitchen counter had said. Marcus was gone too. I was alone in the house. Mrs. Hayes. David's voice was warm but professional. How can I help you? I want to request the early investigation. The one mentioned in the trust documents. A pause. Are you certain? Once initiated, the process is quite thorough. It will involve interviews, documentation, possibly testimony from witnesses. It's not something that can be undone. I'm certain. Can you tell me what prompted this decision? I thought about how to explain it. The furniture that felt like a bribe, the meals that tasted like obligation, the sudden kindness that disappeared the moment I questioned it. My daughter is performing kindness, I said finally. But it's not real, and I need to know if the trust defines care as actions or intentions, because if it's just actions, she'll pass. She's very good at actions. The trust language specifies both, David said. Mr. Hayes was quite clear. He wanted you to be treated with dignity, respect, and kindness, not just housed and fed. The investigation will assess the overall quality of your living situation and relationship. Then I want it to happen. I'll file the paperwork today. The investigator will likely contact you within the week. In the meantime, I'd advise documenting everything, conversations, incidents, how you're treated day to day. Keep a journal if possible. I will. Mrs. Hayes, one more thing. This investigation will damage your relationship with your daughter, possibly irreparably. Are you prepared for that? I looked around my beautiful new room at all the expensive things bought to keep me quiet. The relationship is already damaged, I said. I'm just making it official. After I hung up, I sat there for a long time, staring at my phone, wondering if I'd just made the biggest mistake of my life, or the first smart decision in months. The investigator's name was Patricia Moreno, and she called me 3 days later. Mrs. Hayes, I'll be conducting the evaluation over the next several weeks. I'd like to start with an in-person interview at your current residence, if that's acceptable. Will my daughter be present? Not for the initial interview. I'll speak with her separately. We scheduled it for the following Tuesday at 10 in the morning, when Lila had a standing meeting with her biggest client. I didn't tell her about the call. In the days leading up to Patricia's visit, I watched Lila carefully. She'd recovered from our argument with the same strategy she used for everything, burying the conflict under more gestures of generosity. She took me shopping for clothes, insisting I needed a more updated wardrobe. She bought me a smartphone to replace my flip phone, preloaded with apps she thought I'd like. She made reservations at a spa for both of us, mother-daughter pampering day. Each gift felt like a stone added to the wall between us. You seem distant, she said one evening, while we watched a movie together, her choice, some romantic comedy I had no interest in. Are you still upset about dinner the other night? No, I lied, because I meant what I said. I am trying. I know I haven't been perfect, but I'm working on it. She was still reading from a script, still performing, still convinced that enough presence and planned activities would erase the fundamental problem. She didn't actually want me here. I know you are, I said, because it was easier than the truth. Tuesday arrived cold and rainy, the kind of weather that made my hip ache. I was sitting in the living room when the doorbell rang at exactly 10 o'clock. Patricia Moreno was younger than I expected, maybe 50, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense haircut. She wore a practical pantsuit and carried a leather portfolio. Mrs. Hayes, thank you for meeting with me. I let her in, offered her coffee, which she declined, and we sat in Lila's formal living room. The one I'd been told was for guests only. Patricia pulled out a recorder. Do you mind if I record this conversation? It helps me keep accurate records. That's fine. She pressed record and stated the date and time. Then she looked at me directly. Tell me about living here. For the next 2 hours I talked. I told her about the beige room and the twin bed, about the Mother's Day brunch where I'd been excluded, about overhearing myself called an embarrassment and a charity case, about the sudden transformation after the lawyer's visit, about the furniture and the clothes and the performances of affection. Patricia took notes without interrupting, occasionally asking clarifying questions. Did your daughter know you were financially struggling before you moved in? Yes. I called her crying about possibly losing the house. And what was her initial response? I remembered that sigh, that long, irritated sigh. She said I could move in temporarily, that she and Marcus had their lives and I needed to understand this wasn't permanent. Did she discuss any alternatives with you? Senior housing, financial assistance programs, other family members? No, it was either move in with her or figure it out myself. And since the trust was revealed, how has her behavior changed specifically? Everything changed. The room, the furniture, the sudden interest in my hobbies and health. She started calling me Mom more often. Before it was mostly just you or nothing at all. She plans activities, cooks meals, buys gifts. She's doing all the right things. But none of it feels real. It feels like she's checking boxes on a list. Be nice to Mother, cook Mother's favorite meal, take Mother shopping, and the moment I push back or question anything, she gets defensive, tells me I'm being ungrateful or difficult. Patricia wrote something down. Has she ever been physically aggressive toward you? No, nothing like that. Verbally abusive? I thought about that dinner, about her snapping that I should just take the money and leave. Sometimes, when she's frustrated, but then she apologizes. Do you believe the apologies are genuine? That was the question, wasn't it? The one that kept me awake at night. I don't know, I admitted. I want to believe my daughter is capable of change, that maybe the money is just forcing her to confront how she's been treating me, and eventually the kindness will become real. But Patricia, I've been married for 42 years. I know the difference between someone who loves you and someone who's tolerating you. And right now, I'm being tolerated. She nodded slowly. I'm going to ask you something difficult. If the trust didn't exist, if there was no money involved, do you think your daughter would still want you living here? The answer came immediately, painfully clear. No. Do you think she'd visit you if you lived elsewhere? Maybe on holidays, maybe. Do you think she loves you, Mrs. Hayes? I felt tears building. I think she loves the idea of me. The memory of who I was when she was young and I was useful. But the actual me, the grieving widow who needs help and doesn't fit into her perfect life? No, I don't think she loves that version. Patricia turned off the recorder. I need to be honest with you. Based on what you've described, the living situation prior to the trust revelation clearly didn't meet the standards set forth in your husband's wishes. The changes since then, while materially beneficial, appear to be motivated by financial interest rather than genuine care. So what happens now? I'll interview your daughter, speak with her husband, possibly some of her friends who've observed your interactions. I'll review financial records to understand the timeline of expenses, and then I'll compile a report with my findings and recommendations. How long will that take? 4 to 6 weeks typically. 4 to 6 weeks of living in this house, knowing that every interaction was being evaluated, every kind word from Lila would be analyzed. Every argument would be documented. Your daughter will be informed about the investigation today, Patricia continued. I'm required to disclose that you requested the early review. I want you to be prepared for her reaction. My stomach dropped. She's going to be furious. Most likely. Do you feel safe here? Physically, yes, but emotionally, I trailed off. If at any point you feel unsafe or need to leave, call me immediately. We can arrange temporary housing through the trust funds. She handed me her card, packed up her portfolio, and left. I sat in that formal living room for a long time after she'd gone, staring at the coffee table where the trust documents had first been revealed, wondering what I'd just set in motion. Around noon, my phone rang. Lila's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. She called again and again. On the 4th attempt, I answered. You requested an investigation? Her voice was ice. You called that lawyer and told him I'm abusing you. I didn't say you were abusing me. Then what did you say, Mom? Because I just got a call from an investigator who wants to interview me about how I treat you. She asked if she could speak to my friends from the Mother's Day brunch. Do you know how humiliating that is? About as humiliating as being called an embarrassment by your own daughter. I apologized for that. You apologized because you got caught, Lila, not because you meant it. So this is revenge. You're going to destroy my life because I hurt your feelings? The words hit like a slap. This isn't about revenge. This is about finding out if your father's conditions are being met. If you've been treating me well, you have nothing to worry about. We both know that's bullshit. You're going to tell that investigator every little thing you can think of to make me look bad. Every meal I didn't cook, every time I was busy with work, every moment I wasn't your perfect doting daughter. I'm going to tell her the truth. Your version of the truth. Your bitter, resentful version where nothing I do is good enough. Lila. No, you know what? I'm done. I'm done trying to make you happy. I'm done walking around my own house afraid of upsetting you. You want the money? Take it. Move out. See how far $1.2 million goes when you're alone in some apartment with no one to help you, when your hip gives out or you fall in the shower or you can't figure out your medications. At least I'd have my dignity. She laughed, harsh and bitter. Dignity doesn't pay bills, Mom. Dignity doesn't keep you company at night. You think you're taking some moral high ground here, but all you're doing is cutting off your nose to spite your face. Maybe I'm finally standing up for myself after years of being treated like I don't matter. The line went quiet. When she spoke again, her voice was different, smaller, uncertain. Did I really make you feel like you don't matter? The question caught me off guard. It sounded genuine, hurt. Yes, I said softly, every single day. I didn't mean to. She was crying now. I could hear it. I was just so stressed and overwhelmed, and you're right. I took it out on you. I treated you like a burden instead of my mother. Lila, but I can do better. I am doing better. These past 2 weeks, haven't things been better? They've been different. Because of the money? Yes. But what if the money was just the push I needed? What if it made me realize how badly I'd been behaving, and now I'm actually trying to fix it? This was the question I'd been wrestling with since the day David Harrison walked through the door. Could fear lead to genuine change? Could obligation transform Ian's love? I don't know, I admitted. That's what the investigation is supposed to determine. Or we could determine it ourselves, you and me. No investigators, no lawyers. Just give me a chance to prove I can be the daughter you deserve. It was the same offer she'd been making in different forms for 2 weeks. The same performance with a new script, but underneath it, I heard something I hadn't heard before. Desperation mixed with what might have been real regret. How? I asked. How do you prove that when everything you've done since finding out about the trust has been to protect your inheritance? I don't know, but Mom, please don't do this. Don't let some stranger decide if I'm worthy of my own father's money based on a few interviews. Your father set up those conditions for a reason, Lila. He knew. Somehow he knew this would happen. He didn't know anything, she shot back. He was paranoid and controlling, and she stopped herself. I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. But she had, and maybe that was the most honest thing she'd said in weeks. I need to go, I said. Mom, wait. I hung up. The phone rang again immediately. I turned it off. Then I went upstairs to my beautiful room with its French country aesthetic and sat in the reading chair with lumbar support, and I cried until there were no tears left, because I'd just burned the last bridge between my daughter and me. And I still didn't know if I'd done the right thing. That evening I heard the garage door open. Lila was home early. Her heels clicked across the kitchen floor, then paused. Mom? I didn't answer. She climbed the stairs and knocked on my door. Can we talk? I'm tired, Lila. Please. Against my better judgment, I opened the door. She stood there with red eyes and smudged mascara, still in her work clothes, looking younger than her 38 years. For a moment, I saw the little girl who used to crawl into bed with me during thunderstorms. I talked to Marcus, she said, about everything, about how I've been treating you. He said I've been awful. Marcus has barely spoken to me since I moved in. I know, I told him not to get too involved, that you were my responsibility. I shut him out of the whole situation because I was embarrassed. Embarrassed that my mother needed help. Embarrassed that I couldn't handle it gracefully. Embarrassed that everyone could see I was failing. She leaned against the doorframe. I've spent my whole life trying to prove I'm successful. The business, this house, the right friends, the perfect image. And then you needed me, and I saw it as a threat to everything I'd built. Like having you here meant I'd failed somehow. You haven't failed, Lila. But I have. At the one thing that actually matters, being your daughter. She slid down to sit on the floor, right there in the hallway, and put her head in her hands. I don't know how to fix this. The investigator is going to interview everyone, Brittany, Janet, all those women from the brunch. They're going to tell her what I said. They're going to describe how I treated you. And she's going to write a report saying I don't deserve Dad's money, and she'll be right. I sat down beside her, my hip protesting. We sat there together on the hardwood floor like two children sent to the corner. Do you want to know what your father told me before he died? I asked. She looked up. He said, Lila's going to surprise you, Ellie. She's tougher than she looks, but she's got your heart. When things get hard, she'll figure it out. I think he believed that. Even when he was setting up the trust, he believed you'd make the right choice. Then why the conditions? Because he also knew you'd need motivation. You're like him in that way. You respond to challenges, to goals. He gave you both. The challenge of caring for me and the goal of the inheritance. That's so manipulative. That's love. Complicated, messy love from a man who wanted to protect both of us. She wiped her eyes. What do I do now? You tell the investigator the truth, all of it, the good and the bad, and then you let her decide. What if she decides against me? Then you let me go. You let me take the money and find my own place, and we figure out what our relationship looks like when there's no obligation forcing us together. I don't want to lose you. Then you should have thought about that before you called me a charity case. The words came out harsher than I meant them, but they needed to be said. Lila flinched. You're never going to forgive me for that, are you? I don't know yet. Ask me in 6 months or a year, or however long it takes for me to figure out if you actually mean any of this. We sat in silence for a while. Downstairs I heard Marcus come home. Pause when he didn't find us, then continue to his office. The investigator wants to meet tomorrow, Lila said finally. She said it would take about 2 hours. I'm terrified. Good, you should be. She looked at me shocked. That terror means you understand what's at stake, I continued. Not the money, the relationship. If you go into that interview caring more about the inheritance than about fixing what's broken between us, you've already lost. What if I care about both? Then be honest about that too. She stood up, offered me her hand. I took it and let her pull me to my feet. I'm going to make dinner, she said, something simple. No performances, no fancy china, just food. You want to help? It was the first time since I'd moved in that she'd asked me to cook with her instead of for her. Yeah, I said, I'd like that. We made spaghetti together in her kitchen. She chopped garlic while I stirred the sauce. We didn't talk much, but the silence felt different than before, less hostile, more uncertain. Maybe this was what healing looked like, awkward and uncomfortable and full of unanswered questions. Or maybe it was just another performance, more subtle this time. I couldn't tell any more, and that scared me more than anything else. Patricia arrived at 9 the next morning to interview Lila. I'd made myself scarce, taking a walk around the neighborhood even though my hip was bothering me. The morning air was crisp, almost cold, and I pulled my cardigan tighter as I passed house after house with their perfect lawns and their perfect lives hidden behind closed doors. When I returned an hour later, Patricia's car was still in the driveway. Through the living room window, I could see Lila sitting on the couch, her posture rigid, her hands clasped in her lap. She looked small in that big room with its high ceilings and expensive furniture. I went around to the back door, let myself into the kitchen quietly, and sat at the counter with a cup of tea I didn't really want. The voices drifted through the house. I couldn't make out words. Just the rhythm of conversation, Patricia's calm, measured tones, and Lila's higher, faster responses. At one point, I heard something that might have been crying. 2.5 hours later, Patricia emerged. Lila followed her to the door, her face blotchy and her mascara smudged again. They shook hands. Patricia left. Lila closed the door and stood there with her forehead pressed against it. How did it go? I asked from the kitchen doorway. She jumped, not having realized I was home. Terrible. Worse than terrible. She turned to face me. She asked me to describe our relationship before you moved in, before Dad died, and I realized I couldn't remember the last time we'd had a real conversation. Like months, maybe a year. She walked past me into the kitchen and poured herself water with shaking hands. She asked what we talked about when we did see each other, and you know what I said? Work. I talked about work. You asked questions and I answered them, and I never once asked about your life, about how you were doing, about anything. Leela. She asked about the Mother's Day brunch, about what I said to my friends. She already knew, Mom. Someone must have told her, or maybe she just knew from your interview. But she sat there and made me say it out loud, made me repeat that I called you embarrassing. Lila set down the glass so hard I thought it might shatter. Then she asked why I didn't invite you to join us, and I didn't have an answer. Not a real one. I just said something about it being awkward, about you not fitting in with that crowd. And she asked, why would your mother not fit in with your friends? And I couldn't answer that either without admitting that I was ashamed of you. The word hung between us, sharp and ugly. I told her everything, Lila continued, her voice breaking, about the beige room and the twin bed, about telling you not to use the kitchen during the brunch, about how I sighed when you called me crying about losing the house, all of it, because what was the point of lying? She was going to find out anyway. She slumped into a chair at the kitchen table. She asked if I loved you, straight out, just like that. Do you love your mother? And I said, yes, of course I do. And she said, then why have you treated her like you don't? And I just sat there crying like an idiot because I didn't have an answer to that either. I sat down across from her. What did you tell her? The truth. That I've been selfish and cruel and so focused on maintaining my perfect life that I forgot you were a person with feelings. That I saw you as an obligation instead of my mom. That finding out about the trust made me panic because I knew I'd failed the test before it even started. She wiped her eyes roughly. She asked if the changes I've made since finding out were genuine or strategic. I told her I didn't know anymore, that they started out strategic, but somewhere along the way, I started remembering things like how you used to make me hot chocolate when I had bad dreams, how you sat through every single one of my terrible piano recitals and clapped the loudest, how you believed in me when I wanted to start my business and everyone else said it was risky. Her voice cracked. I forgot that version of you existed. I only saw the version that needed help, that disrupted my routine, that reminded me I wasn't as successful as I pretended to be. Because successful people don't have their elderly mothers living with them out of necessity. They have them living with them out of choice. Lila, stop. No, you need to hear this. Patricia's going to interview Marcus next week, then Brittany and Janet and whoever else she wants to talk to, and they're all going to confirm what a terrible person I've been. And then she's going to write a report recommending that you get the money, and you're going to leave, and I'll have lost you forever over something as stupid as my pride. She looked at me with red, swollen eyes. And the worst part? You'd be right to leave. You should leave. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I reached across the table and took her hand. She gripped it like a lifeline. You're right, I said quietly. You don't deserve it, not yet. She flinched but didn't let go. But deserving isn't the same as earning. The question is whether you're willing to do the work to earn it. I don't even know where to start. You start by being honest. With Patricia, with yourself, with me. No more performances, no more trying to say the right thing or do the right thing to manipulate the outcome. Just truth, even when it's ugly. The truth is ugly, I know, but it's better than pretty lies. We sat there holding hands across her expensive kitchen table, and for the first time since I'd moved in, I felt like I was actually seeing my daughter instead of the persona she'd constructed. It wasn't comfortable, it wasn't healing yet, but it was something. Over the next week, Patricia methodically dismantled Lila's life. She interviewed Marcus on Wednesday. I wasn't there, but Lila told me about it that night over dinner. Take out Chinese, because neither of us had the energy to cook. He didn't hold back, Lila said, pushing lo mein around on her plate. Told her I'd been complaining about you since the day you moved in. That I'd said having you here was like having a stranger in our house. That I'd forbidden him from getting too involved, because I didn't want him getting attached when this was supposed to be temporary. He said all that? He was honest. That's what you wanted, right? Honesty? Her tone was bitter, but not directed at me, more at herself. Patricia asked him if he'd noticed the changes after we found out about the trust. He said yes, definitely. Said it was like a switch had flipped. That I went from avoiding you to smothering you with attention. She set down her fork. Then she asked if he thought the changes were sustainable, if he believed I could maintain that level of care and attention long term, and he said he didn't know, that I'd never been good at sustained effort when I wasn't genuinely invested. That must have been hard to hear. It was the truth. I start projects and abandon them. I make promises and break them when they become inconvenient. He's watched me do it for 10 years of marriage. Why would this be different? Maybe because the stakes are higher. Or maybe I'm just who I am, and no amount of money is going to change that. She stood up abruptly and dumped her mostly full plate in the trash. I'm going to bed. I have an early meeting tomorrow. She left me sitting there with the remains of our dinner, wondering if she was giving up or just being realistic about her limitations. Thursday, Patricia interviewed Brittany. Friday, Janet. I didn't hear the details of those conversations, but I could imagine. Lila had been drunk enough at that Mother's Day brunch to be unguarded, and her friends had laughed along with every cruel observation. They'd tell Patricia everything. Saturday morning, I found Lila in her home office, surrounded by papers. What are you doing? Financial records. Patricia requested documentation of every expense related to your care. The room renovation, the furniture, the clothes, everything. She wants to establish a timeline of when the spending started. She looked exhausted, her hair in a messy bun, still wearing yesterday's clothes. It's all dated after David Harrison's visit, every single receipt. Before that, the only thing I'd purchased for you was a set of cheap towels from Target. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Even the evidence is damning. It's all right here in black and white. No expenses for Mom's comfort until the trust was revealed. Then suddenly thousands of dollars in a single week. It looks exactly like what it is. A panic-driven attempt to buy my way out of consequences. Lila, you need to sleep. I can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I see that report. Patricia sitting in some office, typing up all the ways I've failed, all the evidence of what a terrible daughter I am. And then you leaving and me being alone with the knowledge that I destroyed the one relationship that should have been unbreakable. She put her head down on the desk. Dad would be so disappointed in me. I walked into the office and put my hand on her shoulder. She didn't move. Your father loved you completely. Even when he was setting up that trust, he believed you could be better. That's why he included the conditions. Not to punish you, but to give you a chance to choose differently. I'm choosing too late. Maybe, but you're still choosing. The following Tuesday, 3 weeks into the investigation, Patricia called to say she needed to interview me again. There are some inconsistencies I'd like to clarify, she said over the phone. Would Thursday work? Inconsistencies with what? Your daughter's account of certain events differs from yours in some significant ways. I need to understand the discrepancies. My stomach knotted. What kind of discrepancies? I'd prefer to discuss it in person. Thursday at 10? All right. I hung up and stared at my phone. What had Lila told her? What version of events had she presented that contradicted mine? When Lila came home that evening, I confronted her. Patricia called. She said there are inconsistencies between our stories. Lila set down her bag carefully. I told her the truth. Your truth or the truth? What's the difference? Intent, context, the reasons behind your actions. She turned to face me fully. I told her that before Dad died, we used to have lunch together once a month, that you'd drive into the city and we'd meet at that Italian place near my office, that we'd talk about books and gardening and your volunteer work at the library. I'd forgotten about those lunches. In the grief and chaos of Robert's death and losing the house, they'd slipped away. I told her that after Dad died, I stopped suggesting lunch, that you called a few times to see if I was free, and I always had an excuse, a meeting, a deadline, a client emergency, and after a while you stopped calling. Lila, I told her that when you called crying about the house, I could have offered to help you sort through the finances, could have connected you with Dad's financial advisor, could have done literally anything except sigh and offer you my guest room, like it was some huge sacrifice. She sat down heavily on the couch. I told her that the cruelty didn't start when you moved in. It started the day Dad died, when I decided my grief was more important than yours, when I pulled away instead of pulling closer, when I let you drown because I was too busy keeping my own head above water. That's not how I described it to her. I know, you were kinder to me in your version. You made it sound like things were fine before you moved in and only became bad after. But that's not true, is it? I'd already been pulling away for months, maybe years. She was right. Those monthly lunches had become bi-monthly, then occasional, then non-existent. The phone calls had grown shorter, more perfunctory. The visits had been scheduled around her convenience, never mine. So the inconsistency, I said slowly, is that I painted you in a better light than you deserved. Yes. Why would you correct that? Because you asked me to be honest, and because I'm tired of hiding behind your generosity. You've been protecting me my whole life, protecting me from my own mistakes, from consequences, from reality, and look where it's gotten us. She stood up and walked to the window, staring out at her perfect lawn. Patricia asked me something yesterday. She asked if I thought you enabled my behavior, if your constant forgiveness and understanding made it easier for me to treat you badly, because I knew you'd always give me another chance. The question hit me like cold water. What did you tell her? That yes, you probably did, that you taught me I could be selfish and cruel and you'd still love me anyway. And that's not actually love, that's fear. Fear of losing me, fear of conflict, fear of being alone. That's not fair, isn't it? She turned to look at me. When I didn't show up for Dad's birthday dinner last year because I had a work thing, did you call me out or did you make excuses for me to Dad? I'd made excuses. Told Robert that Lila was under so much pressure that we should be proud of how hard she worked. When I forgot your birthday 2 years in a row, did you tell me I'd hurt you? Or did you say it wasn't a big deal? I'd said it wasn't a big deal, had convinced myself that birthdays weren't important at my age. You've been letting me off the hook my entire adult life, and I took advantage of that. We're both responsible for this mess, Mom, not just me. The words stung because they carried truth I didn't want to examine. So what do we do about it? I asked quietly. We tell Patricia everything, the whole story, not just the parts that make us look sympathetic. We let her decide based on the actual truth, not our curated versions of it. Even if that means losing the money, even then. On Thursday, Patricia arrived with a thicker folder than before. We sat in the living room again, but this time Lila joined us. Patricia had requested we do this interview together. I've completed most of my investigation, Patricia began. I've interviewed family, friends, reviewed financial records, and examined the living situation. But I have some questions that I think are best addressed with both of you present. She opened her folder. Mrs. Hayes, in your initial interview, you described feeling unwanted and treated like an inconvenience from the day you moved in. Is that accurate? Yes. And Mrs. Chen, you've acknowledged that your treatment of your mother prior to discovering the trust was inadequate, correct? Yes, Lila said, her voice steady. Here's where I'm struggling. Mrs. Hayes, you also mentioned that you chose not to tell your daughter how her behavior was affecting you, that you stayed quiet to avoid conflict. Is that also accurate? My throat tightened. Yes. And Mrs. Chen, you said you were unaware of the extent of your mother's unhappiness until after the trust was revealed, that she'd never explicitly told you she was miserable here. That's right. Patricia leaned forward. So what we have is a failure of communication on both sides. Mrs. Hayes didn't advocate for herself, and Mrs. Chen didn't check in enough to notice. The question becomes, is Mrs. Chen responsible for her mother's unexpressed feelings? I should have noticed, Lila said immediately. I should have seen, perhaps, but I'm not asking what you should have done. I'm asking what you knew. Did your mother ever say, Leela, I'm unhappy here? Did she ever say, this room is too small, or I feel excluded from your life? Lila looked at me, uncertainty in her eyes. No, she admitted. She didn't. Patricia turned to me. Mrs. Hayes, why didn't you speak up? I didn't want to be a burden. I didn't want to seem ungrateful. So you suffered in silence and allowed resentment to build rather than having an honest conversation with your daughter. Put like that, it sounded cowardly, passive, exactly the kind of enabling behavior Lila had accused me of. Yes, I whispered. And Mrs. Chen, when you did notice your mother's distress after the broken glass incident at the brunch, did you ask her about it? Did you try to have a conversation about what was wrong? No, I just told her to go upstairs. Why? Because I was embarrassed in front of my friends. I was angry that she'd interrupted. Lila's voice cracked. I was being a bitch. There's no other word for it. Patricia made a note. Here's what I'm seeing. Prior to the trust revelation, we have a pattern of poor communication and mutual avoidance. Mrs. Hayes didn't express her needs. Mrs. Chen didn't inquire about them. Both of you enabled a dysfunctional dynamic that served neither of you well. She flipped to another page. After the trust revelation, Mrs. Chen made significant material improvements to her mother's living situation. She increased time spent together, attempted to engage in meaningful activities, and by all objective measures met the basic criteria of providing comfortable accommodation. My heart sank. She was going to rule in Lila's favor based on the furniture and the dinners and the performances. However, Patricia continued, the motivation behind these changes matters. Mr. Hayes's trust specifically requires that care be provided with dignity, respect, and kindness. Not just the appearance of these things, but the genuine article. She looked at Lila. Mrs. Chen, do you believe you've treated your mother with genuine kindness these past weeks? Lila was quiet for a long moment. No, she finally said, I've treated her with fear. Fear of losing the money, fear of being judged a failure, fear of facing who I've become. The actions might have looked like kindness, but the heart wasn't there, not at first. And now I'm trying. Actually trying, not for the money, but because I looked at myself through Patricia's investigation and hated what I saw. I want to be better, but wanting isn't the same as doing, and doing for a few weeks doesn't erase months of cruelty. Patricia turned to me. Mrs. Hayes, do you believe your daughter is capable of change? The question I'd been asking myself since this nightmare began. I looked at Lila, really looked at her. The dark circles under her eyes from sleepless nights, the weight she'd lost from stress, the way her hands trembled slightly as she waited for my answer. I believe she wants to change, I said carefully. Whether she's capable of it long term, I don't know. People don't transform overnight. Real change takes time, consistency, proof of sustained effort. So you don't trust her. I don't trust the situation. Everything is too tangled up in money and investigations and fear. I can't tell what's real anymore. Patricia closed her folder. I'm going to be direct. My job is to determine if Mr. Hayes's conditions have been met. Based on the evidence, they clearly weren't met in the initial period after Mrs. Hayes moved in. The treatment was inadequate, the accommodation minimal, the emotional support nearly non-existent. Lila's face went pale. However, Mr. Hayes included the 6-month time frame for a reason. He wanted to see sustained change, not immediate perfection. The question is whether the changes that have occurred represent genuine transformation or temporary compliance. She stood up. I'm going to file my preliminary report with the trust administrators. It will document everything I've found, the neglect, the improvements, the complex motivations on both sides. But I'm also going to recommend something that Mr. Hayes included as an option in the trust documents. We both stared at her. A conditional period, 6 months from today, during which Mrs. Chen must demonstrate consistent, genuine care without the pressure of an active investigation. No more interviews, no more scrutiny, just daily life. At the end of that period, Mrs. Hayes will make the final determination about whether the conditions have been met. You're putting it on me? I asked, stunned. Your husband put it on you. The trust gives you the authority to decide if you're being treated appropriately. I can only provide recommendations. You make the choice. She gathered her things. I'll submit my report by the end of the week. You'll both receive copies. After that, the 6-month conditional period begins, assuming you both agree to it. If at any point during those 6 months Mrs. Hayes feels the conditions aren't being met, she can claim the trust funds immediately. If she decides at the end of 6 months that they have been met, the funds transfer to Mrs. Chen. And if I don't agree to the conditional period, I asked, then I make the determination based on current evidence, and given the documented neglect, Prior to the trust revelation, my recommendation would be to transfer the funds to you immediately. Lila closed her eyes. I'll be in touch, Patricia said and left. The silence after she left was deafening. Lila spoke first. You should take the money. What? You heard her. The evidence is clear. I failed. I'm still failing. You should take the money and find somewhere you're actually wanted. Is that what you want? What I want doesn't matter. This is about what you deserve. She stood up and walked to the window where she'd stood so many times during this nightmare, looking out at her perfect lawn, her perfect life that was falling apart. If you agree to the 6 months, I'm going to fail again. You know I will. I'll try hard for a few weeks, maybe a month, and then work will get busy, or I'll get stressed and I'll slip back into old patterns, because that's who I am. That's who I've always been. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Marcus knows it. You know it. Patricia certainly knows it. I'm good at grand gestures and terrible at sustained effort. I can't even stick to a workout routine for more than a month. How am I supposed to completely change my personality for 6 months? She turned to face me. So please, Mom, don't do this to yourself. Don't give me another chance I'm going to waste. Take the money. Find a nice apartment or a condo. Live somewhere you're not constantly walking on eggshells waiting for me to disappoint you again. And what happens to us? I don't know. Maybe we become like we were before, occasional lunches, holiday phone calls, surface level relationship. Maybe that's all we were ever meant to be. I don't believe that. Why not? All the evidence points to it. I stood up and walked over to her. Because your father believed in you. Because somewhere under all this fear and self-loathing is the little girl who used to make me terrible Mother's Day breakfasts. Because people can change if they want to badly enough. But I don't know if I can. Then that's what we'll find out in 6 months. She looked at me with something like hope, fighting through the despair. You're agreeing to the conditional period? Yes. Why? After everything I've done, why would you give me another chance? I thought about all the times she'd failed, and I'd forgiven her. All the missed birthdays and forgotten phone calls and casual cruelties I'd absorbed, because that's what mothers do. Maybe Lila was right. Maybe I had enabled her, but maybe there was a difference between enabling and believing in someone's capacity for growth. Because I'm your mother, I said simply, and mothers are allowed to be foolish sometimes. She pulled me into a hug, and for the first time since Robert died, it felt real. We stood there in her living room holding each other, and I felt her shoulders shake with silent sobs. I'm going to try, she whispered. Really try. I know I've said that before, but this time I mean it. I know you do. Right now, in this moment, you mean it. The question is whether you'll still mean it in 3 months when the crisis has passed and life gets comfortable again. She pulled back to look at me. I'm going to disappoint you, aren't I? Probably, at some point. Nobody's perfect. But you're going to be watching, waiting for me to fail. No, I'm going to be living my life and hoping you'll be part of it in a way that feels healthy for both of us. I don't know what that looks like. Neither do I. That's what we're going to figure out. Patricia's report arrived 3 days later. I read it alone in my room, sitting in the reading chair with lumbar support, and cried through most of it. She documented everything. The beige room, the Mother's Day brunch, the overhead conversations, the sudden transformation, but she'd also documented the monthly lunches we used to have, the slow pulling away after Robert's death, my silence in the face of mistreatment, my failure to advocate for myself. The conclusion was clinical and devastating. Both parties have contributed to the breakdown of their relationship through poor communication, avoidance, and enabling behaviors. While Mrs. Chen's treatment of her mother prior to the trust revelation was clearly inadequate, Mrs. Hayes's unwillingness to express her needs prevented any opportunity for correction. The changes implemented after the trust revelation appear motivated primarily by financial concerns rather than genuine care. However, recent conversations suggest a potential for authentic transformation if given time and proper structure. Her recommendation, 6 months conditional period with monthly check-ins. I signed the agreement that night. So did Lila, and the next morning the real test began. The first week was awkward. We moved around each other carefully, like strangers sharing an elevator, hyper aware of every word and gesture. Lila came home at reasonable hours and asked about my day. I told her about the book I was reading, and she pretended to be interested. We ate dinner together at the kitchen table, making small talk that felt rehearsed. It was polite, civilized, completely hollow. On Thursday night, after another stilted conversation about the weather and her latest client presentation, I set down my fork and looked at her directly. "This isn't working." She froze, panic flashing across her face. "What do you mean?" "This performance, this tiptoeing around each other. If we're going to do this for 6 months, we need to actually live together, not act like we're in a hotel lobby." "I'm trying not to upset you." "I know, but you're treating me like I'm made of glass, like one wrong word and I'll call Patricia and take the money. Won't you?" The question was fair. I'd been holding that threat over both of us, whether I meant to or not. I signed up for 6 months. I'm not going to run at the first sign of trouble. But Lila, you need to stop performing and start being real, even if real is messy. She looked down at her plate. "I don't know how to be real with you anymore. Every time I think of something to say, I hear Patricia's voice asking if it's genuine or strategic. So say the strategic thing and we'll figure out together if it's genuine." That doesn't make sense. Neither does any of this, but we're doing it anyway. She laughed, short and sharp. "Okay, real talk, I hate that you're here." The words stung, but at least they were honest. "Not because of you," she continued quickly, "because of what it represents. My failure to be the person Dad thought I was. My failure to build a life secure enough that I could help my own mother without it feeling like a sacrifice. Every time I see you in this house, I'm reminded that I'm not who I pretended to be." "And what are you pretending to be?" "Successful, independent, someone who has it all figured out. But the truth is, Marcus and I are leveraged to hell. The mortgage on this house, the cars, my business loans. We look wealthy, but we're drowning in debt. That's why I freaked out when you needed help. Not because I didn't have the money, but because I'd already spent money I didn't have trying to maintain an image." This was news. I'd assumed they were comfortable, secure. So the trust money would save us, would pay off the second mortgage I took out to expand my business, would give us breathing room. That's what I couldn't tell Patricia because it makes me look even worse. I wasn't just cruel to you for no reason. I was cruel because I was terrified and projecting all my fear onto you. She pushed her plate away. "Real enough for you?" "Yes," I said quietly. "Thank you. Your turn." "My turn what?" "To be real. Tell me something honest that you've been holding back." I thought about all the things I'd left unsaid over the years. The disappointments, the hurt feelings, the slow accumulation of small rejections that had built into this wall between us. "I'm angry at your father," I said finally. Her eyes widened. "For dying and leaving me alone. For making bad investments without telling me. For setting up this trust without giving me a choice in how it played out. He put us both in an impossible situation. You have to earn love you should have been giving freely, and I have to decide if you're worthy of money that's already poisoned our relationship." The admission felt like betrayal, speaking ill of Robert, but it was true. "I loved him completely," I continued, "but he wasn't perfect, and part of me resents that he tried to control our relationship from beyond the grave instead of just trusting us to figure it out." Lila was quiet for a moment. "He didn't trust me," she said. "That's what the trust really means. He knew I'd failed this test without the financial incentive. He knew I wasn't the daughter you deserved. Or he knew you were capable of being her and gave you a reason to try. That's generous." "I'm trying to be generous to both of you. It's hard." We sat in silence, the remains of our dinner growing cold between us. "This is better," Lila said finally. "Harder, but better." "Yeah. Can we do this? 6 months of actually being honest with each other?" "I don't know, but we can try." The second week, Lila failed her first test. She had a major client presentation on Tuesday that she'd been stressing about for days. Monday night, she stayed up until 2 in the morning preparing. I heard her pacing in her office, muttering to herself, the occasional sound of frustration when something wasn't working. Tuesday morning, she looked exhausted. I made her breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast, and she barely touched it. "You're going to do great," I said. She just nodded, distracted, already mentally at the presentation. That evening, I had dinner ready at 6. She'd said she'd be home by 7 at the latest. 7 came and went, then 8, then 9. At 9:30 she texted, "Sorry running late, don't wait up." At 11 I heard the garage door. She came in looking triumphant, energized, and completely oblivious to the cold dinner sitting on the counter. "Mom, it was amazing. They loved the pitch. They're signing for a 3-year contract. This is huge for the business." "That's wonderful," I said, my voice flat. She finally noticed the kitchen. "Oh, you made dinner? You said 7. "I know, but after the presentation, the client wanted to go out for drinks to celebrate. I couldn't say no." "You could have called or texted something more than running late." Her expression shifted from excitement to defensiveness. "I was networking, building the relationship. That's how business works. And I was sitting here waiting, wondering if you were okay, if you'd forgotten, if I mattered enough to even get a proper text. It was one dinner, Mom. It was the first test of whether you've actually changed or if you're just going through the motions when it's convenient." She set down her bag hard. "So what? I'm supposed to give up career opportunities because you want me home for dinner? That's not fair." "I'm not asking you to give up your career. I'm asking you to communicate like an adult and consider that other people exist." I did communicate. I texted you. 2 words. "Running late." Like I'm some assistant you need to brush off instead of your mother who made you dinner. We stared at each other across the kitchen, the celebration evaporating into familiar tension. "You know what?" Lila said, her voice hard. "This is exactly why this isn't going to work. Nothing I do will ever be enough. I could be here every night at 6 on the dot and you'd find something else to criticize." "That's not true." "Isn't it? You're looking for reasons to fail me, waiting for me to slip up so you can prove you were right not to trust me." "You're the one who slipped up, Lila. I'm not inventing this. It's one missed dinner. It's the pattern. It's you prioritizing everything else over basic courtesy. It's you making excuses instead of apologizing." She grabbed her bag. "I'm going to bed." "Of course you are. Just walk away like always." She turned back. "What do you want from me, Mom? What would be the right response here?" An apology, a real one, not defensive, not qualified, just, "I'm sorry I didn't call and let you know when plans changed." "Fine, I'm sorry." "You don't mean that." "How do you know what I mean?" "Because you're saying it to shut me up, not because you actually feel bad." She laughed bitterly. "You're right, I don't feel bad. I feel proud that I landed a huge contract. I feel excited about the future of my business, and I feel frustrated that I can't even enjoy a professional victory without you making it about your hurt feelings." The words hung between us, cruel and honest. "There it is," I said quietly. "The truth. You still resent me for being here, for needing anything from you. The only thing that's changed is you're better at hiding it most of the time." "Maybe I do resent it sometimes. Does that make me a monster? I'm human, Mom. I have complicated feelings. I can be happy about my career and frustrated about our situation at the same time." Then maybe Patricia was right. Maybe we should just end this now before we hurt each other more. Lila's face went pale. "Is that what you want?" I looked at the cold dinner, at my daughter's defensive posture, at the distance between us that seemed to be growing instead of shrinking. "I don't know what I want anymore." She left the kitchen without another word. I threw out the dinner and went to bed, and for the first time since signing the conditional agreement, I seriously considered calling it off. The next morning, I found an envelope on the kitchen counter. Inside was a handwritten letter from Lila. "Mom, I'm writing this instead of saying it because I need to get the words right, and I always mess them up when we're face to face. You were right last night. I was defensive and dismissive, and I made excuses instead of apologizing. The truth is, I got so caught up in celebrating that I forgot you were waiting. Not forgot you existed. Forgot that you had expectations. Forgot that I'd made a commitment. That's not new behavior. That's the same pattern I've been repeating my whole adult life. I get focused on work and everything else disappears. Marcus has complained about it for years. So have my friends. Now you're experiencing it too. I don't know if I can change that part of myself. But I should have called. Should have said more than 2 words in a text. Should have come home at a reasonable hour or invited you to come celebrate with me. I wasn't thinking about you at all, and that's the real problem. I'm sorry. Actually sorry, not just saying it to end the fight. I'm going to try harder. But I'm probably going to fail again because this is who I am. I don't know if that's good enough for you. I don't know if it's good enough for me, Lila. I read it 3 times, sitting at the kitchen counter with my coffee growing cold. It was the most honest thing she'd written to me in years, maybe ever. The apology wasn't perfect. It was qualified and uncertain and kind of depressing in its assessment of her ability to change. But it was real. I found her in her office, already on a conference call. She looked up when I knocked, covered the phone's mouthpiece. I read your letter, I whispered. She nodded, uncertain. Thank you for being honest. Relief flooded her face. I closed the door and went back to my room, and later that night we had dinner together and didn't talk about the fight. We just existed in the same space, a little bruised, a little wiser. It wasn't healing, but it was something. Week 3 brought Marcus into the equation. I'd barely interacted with him since the investigation ended. He'd been polite but distant, clearly uncomfortable with the whole situation. Can't blame him. His house had become a testing ground for his wife's character, and he was caught in the middle. Saturday morning, Lila left early for a work event. Marcus and I were alone in the house for the first time. I found him in the kitchen making breakfast, looking uncomfortable. Morning, I said. Morning, Eleanor. He never called me Mom, even though we'd been family for a decade. Coffee's fresh. Thanks. Silence. He flipped a pancake with more concentration than the task required. Can I ask you something? I said. He tensed. Sure. Do you resent me being here? He set down the spatula. That's direct. I've learned that direct is better. He poured himself coffee, took a long sip, buying time. Honestly? At first, yes. Not because of you specifically, but because the whole situation was uncomfortable. Lila was stressed, which made her difficult to live with. You and I barely knew each other. And then the trust thing happened and everything got weird. And now? Now I think you're probably the best thing that's happened to this house in a long time. I hadn't expected that. He sat down across from me. Lila's been coasting for years, in her business, in our marriage, in her relationships. She does the minimum to keep things running and calls it success. But she's not happy. I'm not happy. We've been playing house in this expensive building, pretending we have it all figured out. He stared into his coffee. You being here forced her to look at herself, to see how selfish she's been, how shallow. And yeah, it started because of the money, but something's changing. She's actually trying. I've never seen her try this hard at anything that wasn't work-related. She failed pretty hard on Tuesday. I heard about that, the missed dinner. He smiled slightly. She was a wreck Wednesday morning, kept asking me if she'd ruined everything. If you were going to leave, I told her you probably should leave, and she started crying. You told her I should leave. I told her if she couldn't do better than that, you deserved better than this. She needed to hear it from someone other than you. I studied him. You love her. Of course I do. She's my wife. But do you like her? The question seemed to catch him off guard. I used to. Before the business took over, before we got caught up in trying to impress people who don't matter. Back when we were starting out and everything was hard, but we were happy. I liked her a lot then. And now? Now I'm waiting to see if that version of her still exists, or if she's been replaced by someone I don't recognize. He stood up, flipped the last pancake. These are ready if you want some. We ate breakfast together in companionable silence, and I realized that Marcus was on his own 6-month test. Not for money, but for his marriage. We were all waiting to see who Lila would choose to be. Month 2 brought the first real breakthrough. Lila came home one evening and found me crying in my room. I'd been looking at photos of Robert, overwhelmed by a wave of grief that hit without warning the way it sometimes did. She knocked softly. "Mom, you okay?" "Fine, just having a moment." "Can I come in?" I almost said no. Grief felt too private, too raw to share with someone I still didn't fully trust. But I heard myself say yes. She sat on the edge of my bed and looked at the photos spread around me. "I miss him too," she said quietly. "Every day. You never talk about him. Because if I start, I'm afraid I won't stop, afraid I'll fall apart and won't be able to put myself back together." She picked up one photo, Robert at her college graduation, beaming with pride. "He called me the day before he died. Did you know that? I was in the middle of a meeting and sent him to voicemail. I meant to call back. I always meant to call back." Her voice cracked. "But I got busy and then it was late and I figured I'd call the next day, except there wasn't a next day. And now I'll never know what he wanted to tell me." I reached over and took her hand. "He probably just wanted to hear your voice. That's what he always wanted. That makes it worse." We sat there with the photos scattered between us, both crying for the man who'd loved us imperfectly but completely. The man who'd set this whole mess in motion because he couldn't bear the thought of me being alone and unloved. "I would have failed his test," Lila said eventually. "If he'd lived long enough to see how I treated you after he died, he would have been so disappointed. He knew you weren't perfect. He loved you anyway." Did he? Or did he love the idea of who I could be? It was the same question I'd been asking about Lila's love for me. "Both," I said. "He loved who you were and who you could become. That's what parents do." "Is that what you're doing? Loving who I could become?" "I'm trying to. It's hard when who you are right now keeps hurting me." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "Fair." We looked through more photos together. She told me stories I'd never heard, about late-night conversations with her dad about business, about his terrible advice that somehow always worked out, about the way he'd believed in her even when she didn't believe in herself. "He would have wanted us to figure this out," she said. "The trust wasn't about punishing me or testing me. It was about making sure you were okay, making sure I didn't abandon you the way I abandoned him at the end." "You didn't abandon him." "I sent him to voicemail, Mom. We all have regrets, things we wish we'd done differently. But Lila, he knew you loved him, just like I know you love me, even when you're terrible at showing it." She laughed through her tears. "I am terrible at showing it." "Yeah, you really are. I'm working on it." "I know." She helped me gather the photos and put them back in the box. Before she left, she turned back. "Thank you for letting me in just now, for not shutting me out. Thank you for knocking." It was a small moment, but it felt like the first time we'd actually connected since before Robert died. Not performance, not obligation, just two people grieving the same loss and finding comfort in each other. That night, I wrote in the journal Patricia had recommended keeping. For the first time, I didn't write about failures or disappointments. I wrote, "Today we were just mother and daughter. It was enough. Month 3 tested us in a different way. I got sick. Nothing serious, just a bad flu that knocked me flat for a week. Fever, aches, the kind of sick that makes you feel 90 instead of 68. Lila had a major deadline, the kind that required late nights and weekend work. The kind where old Lila would have hired a nurse or asked Marcus to handle it or just left me to manage on my own. Instead, she rearranged her schedule. She worked from home, bringing her laptop to my room and setting up at the reading chair while I slept. She made soup, badly, burning the first batch, but getting it right on the second try. She brought me medications on schedule, refilled my water glass before I asked, helped me to the bathroom when I was too dizzy to trust my hip. "You should be working," I told her on day 3, my voice hoarse. "I am working between taking care of you. You're going to miss your deadline." "Then I'll miss it." "Leila, the money, forget the money, you're sick. I'm your daughter. This is what daughters do." She said it so simply, like it was obvious, like it hadn't taken 3 months and an investigation to get here. "You're going to resent me if you lose this client." "Maybe, but I'd resent myself more if I let you suffer alone." She finished sending an email, closed her laptop. "Besides, I talked to the client. explained the situation. They extended the deadline. Turns out people are pretty understanding when you're honest with them instead of making up excuses. Look at you, learning to communicate. I'm a work in progress. She stayed with me all week. Some of her work suffered. Some deadlines got pushed. Some clients were annoyed, but she didn't waver. And when I was finally better, sitting up and eating real food again, she looked exhausted but satisfied. You know what the weird thing is, she said. I thought taking care of you would feel like a burden, like a sacrifice, but it didn't. It just felt like what I should be doing. That's called love, sweetheart. Is it? Part of it, yeah. She smiled, small and uncertain. I think I'm getting the hang of this. Month 4 brought our first genuine fight that didn't end in threats or slammed doors. I wanted to get a part-time job, nothing major, just volunteering at the local library a few hours a week. I'd been a librarian before Lila was born, and I missed it. Missed the books, the people, having a purpose beyond waiting to see if my daughter would pass her test. Lila hated the idea. Your hip can barely handle stairs. How are you going to shelve books? I'll figure it out. Mom, you're 68. You should be resting, enjoying retirement. I'm 68, not dead. I need something that's mine. You have things that are yours, your room, your books. Those are things you gave me. I need something I choose for myself. She paced the kitchen, frustrated. This is because you don't trust that I'll take care of you. You're trying to establish independence in case this all falls apart. Maybe that's part of it, but mostly it's because I'm bored and lonely and I need to feel useful. You are useful. You cook, you clean. I don't want to be useful to you. I want to be useful to the world. I want to have conversations with people who aren't related to me or investigating me. I want to feel like a person again instead of a problem to be solved. That stopped her. Is that how I make you feel, like a problem? Sometimes, not always. But Lila, this whole 6 months has been about you proving you can take care of me. What about what I need beyond being taken care of? She sat down heavily. I don't know how to do this. Do what? Let you be independent while also proving I'm taking care of you. If you're out working, how do I show that I'm meeting Dad's conditions? By supporting my choices, by being happy that I'm finding purpose, by understanding that care doesn't mean control. She was quiet for a long time. Okay, she finally said, okay, volunteer at the library. If that's what you need, I'll support it. Just like that? No, not just like that. It took me 20 minutes of arguing and you having to explain basic human needs before I got there, but I'm getting there. I laughed despite myself. Progress. Slow, painful progress. It's the only kind that lasts. I started at the library the following week. 3 afternoons, 4 hours each. It was wonderful. The smell of books, the quiet conversations with patrons, the simple satisfaction of helping someone find exactly what they were looking for. Lila picked me up after my first shift, anxious. How was it? Are you okay? Is your hip hurting? It was perfect, and yes, I'm fine. Really? Really, thank you for letting me do this. I didn't let you do anything. You're an adult. You make your own choices. Yes, but you could have made it difficult. Instead, you made it easy. That matters. She smiled, genuine and unguarded. I'm learning. Month 5 almost broke us. Marcus lost his job. Budget cuts, company restructuring, the usual corporate speak that meant someone had to go and he was it. The timing couldn't have been worse. Without his income and with Lila's business still recovering from the clients she'd lost taking care of me, they were suddenly in serious financial trouble. The trust money became impossible to ignore. I heard them fighting one night, their voices carrying through the walls. We can't make the mortgage payment next month, Marcus said. Not unless we tap into savings, and savings are almost gone. I know. So what's the plan? We can't wait another 2 months for the trust to resolve. We need money now. I'm working on it. I have pitches out to 3 new clients. Amhageshi. Pitches don't pay bills, Lila. What do you want me to do? Ask my mom to leave early so I can claim the money. That's not how this works, isn't it? She has the power to end this whenever she wants. If she knows we're struggling, maybe she'd be willing to make a decision now, instead of dragging this out. You want me to guilt her into giving me the money? I want us to survive. I want to keep our house, our life. Is that so terrible? Silence. Then Lila's voice, small and defeated. I'll talk to her. My stomach dropped. The next morning she came to my room looking like she hadn't slept. Mom, we need to talk. I knew what was coming. I'd been waiting for it, honestly. Waiting for the moment when the financial pressure would become too much and she'd ask me to make a choice. Marcus lost his job, she said. We're in trouble. Real trouble. I heard. Of course you did. These walls are paper thin. She sat on my bed, defeated. I'm not going to ask you to end the conditional period early. I'm not going to beg for the money, but I need you to know what's at stake. If we can't make the mortgage, we lose the house. If we lose the house, we lose everything. And you need the trust money to prevent that. Yes. But more than that, I need to know if any of this has mattered. If the past 5 months of trying have made any difference, or if you're still planning to take the money and leave when the 6 months are up. Lila, I need to know, Mom, not in a month, now. Because if you've already decided I've failed, I need to start making other plans. I need to sell this house while I still can. Instead of waiting for it to be foreclosed, I need to prepare for a different future. She looked at me with a raw desperation. So please, tell me the truth. Do you think I've changed? Do you think I've earned the money? Or have I been wasting my time trying to prove something that was never going to be enough? It was the question I'd been avoiding asking myself, because the answer was complicated and messy and didn't fit neatly into pass or fail. You have changed, I said slowly. You're more present, more thoughtful. You're trying in ways you weren't before. But I don't know if you've changed enough, or if the changes are sustainable without the pressure of the trust hanging over us. And I don't know if I can trust that you won't go back to the way things were once the money is secure. So I've failed. No, you're passing, but barely, and that scares me. She stood up agitated. What more do you want from me? I've rearranged my entire life. I've put your needs first, even when it cost me professionally. I've been honest, even when it hurt. What else is there? Time, consistency, proof that this isn't just survival mode, but actual transformation. We don't have time. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Then maybe that's your answer. Maybe the real test is what you choose when the money becomes urgent again. Do you choose me or the mortgage? She stared at me. That's not fair. Life isn't fair. Your father knew that. That's why he set this up the way he did. So what do I do? You figure out how to save your house without leveraging our relationship. You find another way. Because if you can't do that, then you haven't really changed at all. She left my room angry, and I sat there wondering if I'd just made a terrible mistake. The answer came 3 days later. Lila and Marcus listed the house. I found out when I saw the realtor's sign being installed in the front yard. What are you doing? I asked, finding Lila in her office. Making a choice. We're downsizing. Found a smaller place, more affordable. We'll be able to make the payments on Marcus's severance and my current income. You're selling your house. Our house was always too big anyway. Too expensive. We bought it to impress people who don't care. Time to let it go. And where does that leave me? She looked up from her computer. With us. The new place has 3 bedrooms. Yours will be smaller than this, but not beige, I promise. You're including me in your plans. Of course I am. You're my mother. Where else would you be? But the money could solve all of this. You could keep the house, pay off the debts. If you decide I've earned it, yes. But I'm not going to force your hand by creating a crisis. That would prove I haven't changed at all. She closed her laptop. I'm choosing you over the house, Mom, over the image, the pretense, all of it. Maybe I should have done it 5 months ago. Maybe it's too late to matter, but I'm doing it now. I sat down in the reading chair, stunned. You're really willing to lose everything? I'm willing to lose the things that don't matter to keep the things that do. Turns out this house doesn't matter. Neither do my fancy cars or my country club membership or impressing people I don't even like. But you matter. Our relationship matters. Becoming someone Dad would be proud of matters. She smiled sadly. The money would be nice. I won't pretend it wouldn't. but I'd rather earn it the right way than get it by default because you felt sorry for me. For the first time in 6 months, I believed her completely. Not because the words were perfect or the gesture was grand, but because she was sacrificing something real, something that mattered to her. And she was doing it without expecting anything in return. 1 more month, I said. What? You have 1 more month. Then I'll make my decision. But Lila, if you can maintain this version of yourself, who chooses people over possessions, then yes, I think you'll have earned it. She started crying. Really? Really? She came around the desk and hugged me, and for the first time since this nightmare started, the hug felt like it used to when she was young, uncomplicated, full of love. I'm going to make it, she whispered. I'm going to make it to 6 months and prove I've changed. I know you are. And sitting there in her office while she cried in my arms, I realized something. I'd already made my decision. I just needed 1 more month to be sure. The final month should have been a victory lap. Instead, it nearly destroyed everything we'd built. The house sold faster than expected. A young couple with twins made an offer within a week, and Lila accepted it even though it was $20,000 below asking. We had 30 days to pack up 10 years of their life and move into a modest 3-bedroom ranch on the other side of town. I helped where I could, wrapping dishes and newspaper, sorting through closets full of clothes Lila hadn't worn in years. Marcus worked in quiet efficiency, his jaw tight with the stress of unemployment and downsizing, and Lila oscillated between manic productivity and moments of staring blankly at the walls of the house she'd loved. I bought this place to prove I'd made it, she said one afternoon, standing in the empty living room. The furniture had already been moved, leaving only dust outlines on the hardwood. My first big success, physical evidence that I wasn't my parents, no offense. None taken. Dad and you always rented, always said you didn't need to own. I thought that was just an excuse, that you couldn't afford to buy. I was so determined to do better. She ran her hand along the wall. Turns out you were right. Flexibility matters more than ownership. Houses don't make you successful. They just make you house poor. Your father would be proud of you for realizing that. Would he? I'm 38 and moving into a house half the size because I couldn't manage my money. You're 38 and choosing your mother over your mortgage. He'd definitely be proud of that. She smiled, but it was fragile. 23 more days. Then you decide if I've earned his trust fund. The move happened on a Saturday in early October. Marcus had found a new job, not as good as the old one, but steady. Lila directed traffic, her voice brittle but holding together. I mostly stayed out of the way, sitting on a folding chair in what would be my new room, watching strange men carry my furniture past. The room was smaller than the French country one, but it had better light. A window that looked out on a backyard with actual trees. What do you think? Lila asked, appearing in the doorway. It's nice. It's not nice. It's small and the carpet is old and the closet is barely big enough. But it's what we can afford. Lila, I like it. This room feels more like home. That showcase you built me before was for someone you wanted me to be. This one is for who I actually am. She leaned against the doorframe, exhausted. I wish I'd figured that out 6 months ago. You figured it out when you were ready. That's generous. I'm feeling generous today. She managed a real smile. 13 days left. The answer came 9 days before the deadline in the most unexpected way. I fell. Not dramatically. I just tripped over a box Marcus had left in the hallway, lost my balance, and went down hard on my bad hip. The pain was immediate and overwhelming. I heard something crack, not break, the doctor would later say, just a bad bruise and strained ligaments. But lying there, I genuinely thought I'd broken something. Mom? Lila's voice, distant. You okay? I tried to answer but could only make a small sound of distress. Footsteps, running. Then Lila was there, kneeling beside me, her face white with panic. Don't move. Marcus, call an ambulance. I don't need an ambulance, I managed. Just help me up. You're not moving until a doctor checks you. Marcus. The ambulance came. Lila rode with me, holding my hand the entire time, talking in a voice, trying so hard to stay calm. You're going to be fine. It's probably just a bruise. You're tough. Remember when you fell off that ladder? You were fine then. You'll be fine now. She was babbling, terrified, forgetting to be the composed businesswoman. Lila, breathe. I'm breathing. I'm fine. You're the one who fell. And you're the one who's panicking. I'm not panicking. I'm concerned. That's different. But her hand was shaking in mine. At the hospital, nothing broken, just badly bruised. The doctor prescribed pain medication, rest, and physical therapy. She'll need assistance for the next few weeks, the doctor told Lila. Help getting around, managing daily activities. I'm her support, Lila said immediately. I'll take care of her. Back at the house, Lila set me up on the couch with everything I might need within reach. I'm calling out of work tomorrow, she said, and probably the rest of the week. Lila, you can't. Yes, I can. I have sick days. I'm using them. This isn't about the trust. You don't have to prove anything. The 6 months is almost over anyway. She sat down on the coffee table facing me. You think I'm doing this because of the deadline? Mom, when I saw you on that floor, I forgot about the money. I forgot about the investigation. All I could think was, what if I'd lost you before I had the chance to make things right? Tears were streaming down her face. I was so scared, so completely terrified, and all I could think was, what if the last conversation we had was about the trust instead of about how much I love you? Lila, let me finish. These 6 months haven't been about the money. They've been about me learning to be your daughter again. Learning that love isn't something you perform when it's convenient. It's something you choose every day, even when it's hard. She wiped her eyes roughly. So no, I'm not staying home to impress you. I'm staying home because you're my mom and you're hurt and there's nowhere else I'd rather be. I reached out and took her hand. Thank you. For what? For choosing me. For real this time. She squeezed my hand. It's not even a choice anymore. It's just who I am now. And watching her face, seeing the genuine fear and love there, I believed her. For the first time in 6 months, I completely believed her. The next week was hard but illuminating. Lila took time off work and became my full-time caretaker. She helped me to the bathroom, brought me meals, kept up with my medication schedule, helped me with physical therapy exercises. She did it all without complaint, without counting hours, without any sense that she was performing. Marcus watched it all with something like wonder. I've never seen her like this, he told me one afternoon. This focused on someone else. It's like she's a different person. She's the person she was always capable of being. She just needed a reason to try. Or she needed to lose everything to realize what mattered. Maybe both. The day before the deadline, I asked Lila to sit down with me. We'd moved to the backyard where I could sit in a lawn chair and keep my leg elevated. The fall air was crisp, the leaves just starting to turn. Tomorrow is the day, I said. I know. She was nervous. I could see it in the way she twisted her hands together. Before I make my decision, I need to ask you something. What happens after? Let's say I decide you've met the conditions. What changes? She was quiet for a long moment. Honestly, I don't know. The money would solve a lot of problems, but Mom, I don't want to go back to the way things were, even if we could afford it. Why not? Because I was miserable. I spent so much time trying to impress people who didn't care that I forgot about the people who did. You, Marcus, even myself. She looked at the small house behind us. This place is smaller, less impressive, but I'm happier here. We eat dinner together. We talk. Marcus and I actually like each other again. And you. We have an actual relationship instead of you being some obligation I resent. So the money wouldn't change that? I hope not, but I can't promise it wouldn't tempt me. Old habits die hard. It's going to take more than 6 months to completely unlearn that. At least you're honest about it. That's about all I can offer, honesty and the promise that I'll try. I can't guarantee I won't fail sometimes. I'm not perfect, Mom. I'm never going to be perfect. I don't need perfect, I just need genuine. Then I can give you genuine effort, genuine love, genuine commitment to being better than I was. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. The dark circles under her eyes came from taking care of me now instead of from stress and resentment. She'd lost weight but gained something more valuable: peace. "Okay," I said. "Okay, what?" "Okay, I believe you." She started crying. "Does that mean—" "It means tomorrow when David Harrison calls, I'm going to tell him you've met your father's conditions." She fell to her knees beside my chair and put her head in my lap, crying like a child. I stroked her hair and cried too. "I'm going to make you proud," she said through tears. "I'm going to use this money wisely. I'm going to be the daughter you deserve. You already are." The next morning, David Harrison called at 9 o'clock sharp. Lila and Marcus sat on the couch across from me, holding hands, nervous as teenagers. "Mrs. Hayes," David's voice was professional but warm. "Today marks the end of the 6-month conditional period. Have you made your determination?" "I have." "And your decision?" I looked at Lila, who was holding her breath. "The conditions have been met. My daughter has provided me with appropriate care, dignity, respect, and kindness. I recommend the trust funds be transferred to her as outlined in my husband's wishes." Lila burst into tears. Marcus let out a breath he'd been holding. "Excellent," David said. "I'll file the necessary paperwork. The funds should be transferred within 2 weeks. Congratulations to you both." After we hung up, Lila just sat there crying. Not desperate sobs, but something deeper. Relief mixed with grief, mixed with joy. "I wish Dad could know," she said finally. "I wish he could see that I passed his test." "He knows," I said. "Somehow, wherever he is, he knows." 2 weeks later, the money transferred. Lila sat at the kitchen table, staring at the bank statement, looking like she might cry or throw up. "It's real," she whispered. "It's real," I confirmed. "We could do anything, buy a bigger house, new cars, or," Marcus interrupted gently, "we could be smart, pay off the debts, build savings, invest the rest. Actually use this as the security it was meant to be." Lila looked at him, then at me. "That's what Dad would want, isn't it? Your father would want you to be happy, but yes, being responsible would make him proud." She closed the laptop. "Okay, we pay off the debts first, then we figure out the rest." Over the next months they did exactly that. Paid off debts, built savings, invested wisely. The relief of financial stability changed everything. Marcus was less stressed. Lila was less defensive. We all breathed easier. But the real change wasn't financial. Lila kept her promise. She worked reasonable hours and came home for dinner. She asked about my day and actually listened. She made plans that included me without treating it like an obligation. She forgot sometimes, got busy, got stressed, slipped into old patterns, but she caught herself faster now. Apologized quicker. Course corrected without needing to be told. We weren't perfect, we still fought sometimes, but we talked about it, worked through it, didn't let resentments build into walls. A year after the trust settled, Lila and I started a tradition. Every Sunday morning, we'd have breakfast together at a little diner near the library. Just the two of us. We'd order too much food and talk about everything and nothing. It was ordinary, completely unremarkable, and it was everything. "You know what I realized," Lila said one Sunday over pancakes. "I spent my whole adult life chasing extraordinary, but the best thing I ever did was commit to the ordinary." "How very middle-aged of you," she laughed. "I'm only 39. That's not middle-aged. Keep telling yourself that. You're terrible. You love me anyway." "I do," she said, and there was no hesitation, just simple truth. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Always." "Do you ever regret it, giving me the money? Wonder if you should have kept it and gotten your own place?" I thought about it honestly. There had been moments when old patterns flared up, when I'd wondered if independence would have been simpler. "No," I said, "I don't regret it. You earned it. More importantly, we earned this. This relationship, this peace. We worked for it together. But you could have been free." "I am free. Free to leave if I want. free to speak my mind, free to make my own choices. That's not about where I live. That's about finally standing up for myself and you finally respecting me enough to listen. She played with her napkin. I still slip up sometimes, and I still keep quiet sometimes when I should speak up. We're both works in progress. Think we'll ever get it right? We already have. This, right here, this is what right looks like. Imperfect people showing up for each other consistently. She smiled. When did you become so wise? Around the time I realized that love isn't something you feel, it's something you do. Every day, in small ways, even when you don't feel like it. I reached across the table and took her hand. Your father and I taught each other that. Some good lessons, some bad, but the good outweighed the bad. Same with you and me. The good outweighs the bad now. That's all we can ask for. I love you, Mom. I love you too, sweetheart. We finished our breakfast and walked out into the sunshine. Lila linked her arm through mine as we walked to her car, and I leaned on her a little, not because my hip was bothering me, but because it felt good to lean on my daughter and know she could handle the weight. Now, sitting here years later, I can look back and see the full arc of our story, the beige room to the small room with good light, the performances to the genuine peace, the resentment to the real love. It wasn't smooth, it wasn't easy. There were setbacks and failures and moments when we both wanted to give up, but we didn't. We kept choosing each other day after day, even when it was hard. Lila still slips sometimes, gets stressed and snappy, forgets to call when she's running late, but the slips are shorter now, the apologies quicker, the recovery faster, and I slip too, get defensive, hold grudges, assume the worst. We're both still learning, still figuring out how to be mother and daughter after years of being strangers. But here's what I know for sure. Love isn't something you feel in a moment. It's something you build over time through consistent small actions and uncomfortable conversations and choosing each other again and again. The trust fund didn't buy Lila's love. It didn't buy my forgiveness. It didn't fix anything automatically. What it bought was time for us to figure out who we wanted to be to each other, time to practice being better, time to build something real. And in the end, that time was worth more than any amount of money, because now I have my daughter back, not the one I imagined, not the one I wished for, but the real one, flawed and trying and showing up consistently. And she has me, not the martyr mother who suffered in silence, but the real me, someone who speaks up, who has boundaries, who demands respect while offering grace. We're not perfect, we never will be, but we're real, and we're here, and we chose each other. In the end, that's the only inheritance that matters. The trust Robert left wasn't really about money. It was about forcing us both to confront who we'd become and choose who we wanted to be. He gave us a reason to fight for our relationship instead of letting it die from neglect. The money was never the point. The point was us finding our way back to each other. Mission accomplished, my love. Your daughter turned out okay. So did I. We both did. And we're going to be just fine.